Alrighty. How are we doing for time? Looks like we're at 1:29.
That's a pretty fancy building you guys got going on over there.
Might be live. No. With the exception of this one, which is always on.
It's always on?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. And the microphones, you push the button once, and it turns on.
Yeah.
You push it again to go off. Is there a red light or something? There's a light. Green light.
Okay, it looks like it's 1:30, so we'll kick off now. So we'll call to order. So we can see most everyone. So I'd like to start off today by recognizing that we're conducting our business in the District of Ucluelet's council chambers, which are very beautiful. And we're conducting our business today on the traditional territory, the territory of the Ucluelet First Nation. I believe that Lavana is here today. Yep. Hello. And yeah, it's very nice here. Very wonderful drive. We're happy to be on the West Coast. So we are conducting our meeting in a hybrid format today. And I would like to recognize that we are coming to you live mostly from New Shawness and potentially Coast Salish or the Kwangin-speaking territory, if not here in the Ucluelet District chambers. With that in mind, we will move into noting that today we're conducting our business in a hybrid format. So we do have directors who are here today in the council chambers. I believe we have, I think Vida is in the boardroom right now in Port Alberni. And we have others online. So hi Vida. Sorry it ended up this way. So with that, we'll go around the table here, and then we'll have introductions online. So if we want to start on Lavana's side, and then just we'll come around this way.
Hi, Lavana Mastrangelo, representing Ucluelet First Nation.
Mike Spur, representing Cherry Creek Electoral District.
Good afternoon, Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet.
Debbie Haggard, Councillor for the City of Port Alberni and Vice Chair for the Regional District, and so happy to be here in the beautiful community of Ucluelet.
And I am John Jack, a director for Huu-ay-aht First Nations, as well as the chairperson.
I'm Tom Steer, appointed director from the District of Tofino.
Afternoon, Kirsten Johnson for Toquat Nation. Good afternoon, Aklama Penny Cote. I'm the electoral area director for Sprout Lake.
Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Sayan, CAO for the ACRD.
Good afternoon. Cynthia Dick, General Manager of Administrative Services.
Jenny, do you have your own microphone? You're going to steal one? Okay.
Do I have to press a button or does it work?
Yeah, I think you need to press a button since it's a... There you go.
I'm short. Can you hear me now? Okay. Jenny Runn, General Manager of Community Services.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, and Vida, go ahead.
Jada Siga, ACRD Area C, Long Beach Director.
Thank you. And Susan?
Susan Roth, I represent the best interests of the people of Beaver Creek. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bob?
Bob Beckett, Area A, Bamfield.
And I can't quite see the name there. Selena, go ahead. Sabrina, sorry.
Oh, hello, everybody. Sabrina Crowley. I'm a legislative member of the Chuckleset Tribe government, and I'm sitting in as an alternate in today's meeting.
Great, thank you. And finally, Fred.
Red Boyko, Electoral Area Director for the beautiful area of Beaufort. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that's it. For those of you viewing online now or in the future, we don't monitor the YouTube chat. We do monitor the Zoom call. However, the best way to get a hold of us during the meeting for question period would be at an email address, responses@acrd.bc.ca. And that would be the best way to do it. We'll check it at the end of the meeting, and then we'll go from there. So with that in mind, we do have an amendment to the agenda to add a late item to item 9.1A, which is a DVD 23012. So that'll be added to the 9.1A, which is under, I believe it's under planning matters for electoral area directors. Yes, that's true. It's a development variance. Are there any other items to add to the agenda? If not, we could have a motion to approve. Thank you, Director McEwen, and seconded by Director Mastrangelo. Okay, any further comments? Ooh, I really have to move my head to make sure I'm seeing everybody. Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to declarations. Does anyone have any declarations of conflict of interest or gifts exceeding $250? Usually has to do with planning matters. There aren't many this time around. Okay, and that brings us into the adoption of minutes. Okay, so the first one is the Board of Directors meeting minutes for May 8th, 2024. Moved by Director Johnson, seconded by Director McEwen. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Brings us to 4B, the Committee of the Whole meeting for May 8th, 2024. Moved by Director Steer, and seconded by Director McEwen. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? A motion carried. Thank you. Okay. That brings us to item C, which is the Agricultural Development Committee meeting dated May 14th, 2024. Director Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll make the motion to do this, but there's one important thing that came out of the meeting last week. There are some items in the zoning bylaw, in the proposed zoning bylaw, that match the current changes to the ALC regulations that have been put forward by the province. We have not adopted them as a board yet because currently we're going to do the OCPs and then the zoning bylaw, which might be up to 3 years from now before that actually gets back to it and gets passed. So there's some push from the agricultural sector to get those things in the zoning bylaw done now rather than wait 3 years. So we don't have to wait for those positive changes to take place. They can be discussed later. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do we have a seconder for the motion to adopt the minutes? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll make sure that that can go through our processes and get on the agenda for a quicker future meeting, Director Boyko? Yeah. Okay, all those in favor of adopting the minutes? Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. I watched that committee meeting. It was good. Next item is item D, the Accessibility Committee meeting dated May 14th, 2024. I missed this one. So thank you, Director Steer, seconded by Director Sparrow. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? A motion carried. Thank you. And lastly, for the minutes is the Emergency Program Executive Committee meeting dated May 15th, 2024. Thank you, Director Steer, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments? I watched this one as well. I liked it. Okay. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, we don't have any petitions or delegations or presentations, nor do we have any correspondence for action. We have 3 pieces of correspondence for information. Would anyone like to move all 3 or pull anything out before we do so? Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to pull out item number 7A, Chris Bertu, who's participating in Tour de Rock in 2024 out of Port Alberni. And I'm just wondering, it's such a great cause, and to see our first responders, working that hard to draw awareness for the needs of supporting cancer research and helping those that have been affected by cancer. I'm just wondering if there are other first responders from the region who are participating in Tour de Rock, and is that something that we could acknowledge and promote on our website? Thank you.
Sorry, I turned my microphone off. I think that's easily achievable. Yeah, Daniel's nodding, but yeah, go ahead.
I'm not aware of who else other than Chris, but we can follow up and find out pretty quickly, and certainly do our best to promote it a little bit more. We might even get creative, and if we get a few interested, we can challenge one another on how it is that we can support these groups. But I'll definitely follow up, Bob, and I'll send an email out to the board once I have more details.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Along for 7A also, Chris Barretto was a Sprout Lake Fire Department member and was supported by the Sprout Lake Fire Department through his cancer treatment. And definitely, I'm sure that we will be doing something through the Sprout Lake Fire Department in support of his volunteering for Tour de Rock. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Cote. Any further comments on this particular item? Seeing none, Dr. Boyko, go ahead.
I got some for 7, Charlie, when you're ready to go for that one.
Okay, please go ahead.
So I'm sure everyone read the detailed agenda, and the pages referencing the food insecurity are quite staggering in the cost increases and what this is doing to people. But there's 50% increase in food insecurity and severe, and 22.5% moderate. These changes are very dramatic throughout all of Canada, and in the Alberni Valley specifically, where we have the highest child poverty in British Columbia. Anytime we have huge tax increases, like we just passed a 10.5% budget increase, this affects child poverty and food insecurity dramatically. So I would like to make sure in the director's mind and staff that every change we move to increase spending makes these numbers worse. So we should aim to have tax increases at CPI or less, which is currently 2.7% as of yesterday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Dr. Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. As part of the Alberni Clayoquot Health, as part of the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network, we talk about these numbers already, and do bring that information forward through Vital Signs that's produced by a group from Alberni. That's for the West Coast. Yeah, there's one for the Alberni Valley and the BCT for the West Coast. Just like to say that through our taxation, we've also had requests for grant and aids for backpack program and other initiatives that we can take a look at coming through our process of taxation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cote. Any further comments? Dr. Beckett, please go ahead.
I'd like to move that the Board of Directors receive items A through C for information.
Thank you. Seconded by Dr. Steer. Any further comment? Okay, I was gonna pull out item 34 and just say it looks like it's kind of redundant, but I think, support for Bill 34 bringing back the illegal substances kind of follows what the province is doing anyway. So I think we're in okay shape there. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Alrighty, I'd like to welcome a city councillor. Would you like to be a part of the group? Well, we have empty space here if you want to share a microphone.
You can come here. There's a mic. I can sit.
Or you can take the podium. A lawyer with a motorcycle, though, it's a bit different. It's he's more of a my cousin Vinny lawyer, if you think about it, though, right? So I lost the page. There it is. Okay. Just be ready to jump up, Jenny, because you're up next. Okay, so with that, we've received the correspondence for information. That brings us to 8A. 8A is a request for a decision regarding the Long Beach Airport line marking contract award. I almost said marketing. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so that's line painting on the airport, and that allows for clear visible lines for airport operations, which is essential. We conducted an RFP for this work for 2024. We received 4 bids for the work. The lowest cost submission and the highest scoring company was Denmark Runway Grooving. So that bid is for 89,360, which is within the approved financial plan budget of $90,000. And so we're recommending that the board approve award of this contract.
Thank you. Dr. Steer?
Yeah, unless there's any questions for Jenny, I'll move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District ACRD Board of Directors award the Long Beach Airport line marketing contract to Denmark Runway Grooving Limited in the amount of $89,360, excluding GST, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the LBA line marketing contract on behalf of the ACRD.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, everyone. I'll just say Director Johnson and Director Boyko, you're up next. Go ahead.
Just a quick question for Jenny. Is it possible for the directors to see more details of this rather than the recommendations of staff, like actually see the budgets or see the bids themselves and see what the prices are and things like that, rather than just the recommended number that comes from staff, so we can look at things? Thank you.
Absolutely. If that's requested, that's not a problem at all. And if we always have the option to defer reports, if you'd like more information before approving, not a problem.
Like just in general, moving forward for everything in the future, give us a link that gives us where they are, so that if we would like to delve into it, we don't have to push things back and just have it all set up. That'd be great. Thank you.
Like an appendices kind of thing, right?
Something simple and easy. It doesn't have to go to everybody, just something that we can delve into more details when we have time and we want to look at it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's fair. Just sorry, Chair, as a note to that as well, we would, of course, I think it's best if we just put the information that is available in the report itself, so that's clear and transparent to everyone as well as to the public. And most things are FOI-able as well anyhow, like we're happy to share all that. So we will make sure that we're just providing more information. And I assume that's probably specific to the costs, which we didn't have details on the cost because we do include that in our scoring criteria, but that's not a problem. We can include that moving forward. And for this one in particular, if you're curious, I can provide detailed information.
Yeah, just attach them to the briefing note or something like that.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, any further comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item B, which is the Bamfield free tipping fee pilot program. Ooh, say that 3 times fast. Please go ahead.
Bamfield tipping free fee voucher. No, I can't say it 3 times fast. Okay. So we originally started this program back in 2018 in Bamfield because Bamfield is very remote and we were getting a lot of challenges with illegal dumping. As you've heard recently, as we're looking at buying bins and securing bins there to reduce our hauling costs, the hauling cost from Bamfield is very high. We ran a pilot project which gave residents vouchers that we would waive the tipping fees if they drove their waste to the landfill. this is so much cheaper for us to actually just not receive the revenue for the waste and have them bring it to the Alberni Valley landfill. We ran that for a number of years. We renewed it 2 times. Each year we get maybe about 15 vouchers used. And in total over those last 5 years, we've waived just over $3,000, maybe almost $4,000 in tipping fees. In comparison to what the cost would be for hauling that out, it's significant. We were actually going to look at just extending the pilot again, but we took this to the Banfield Services Committee and offered that we just make it a permanent solution. So the Banfield Services Committee supported that, and they're recommending that we approve a permanent tipping fee voucher policy. We have now updated and created a policy. We won't be sending out vouchers. Instead, we will have people make a request, similar to how we do a tipping fee waiver for a cleanup event in any other area in the regional district. So if you're going to be making a haul and it's a significant value, then you would fill in the form and make a request and we approve it. And then we would waive your tipping fees because, again, it would save the community of Banfield because they pay the taxes for their waste. It would be more cost effective for them. So this is what we are looking to do. And there may be questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you. Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Jenny, I just want to confirm that you mentioned that this will only be paid for by the Banfield people, not everybody else in the district.
So under our financial plan, although this is still under one service because of the incorporation papers, so it's Alberni Valley and Banfield are under one waste shed. So we keep it together under one service. When you look in the financial plan, we keep the Banfield costs separate. So that means that the costs and revenues that come in through Banfield are assigned to Banfield. And so right now, Banfield has a specific tax requisition for solid waste that is different than the Alberni Valley, even though they're under the same service.
So I just want to confirm that this decision to give free tipping fees permanently for Banfield people will only be paid for by Banfield. Just yes, no. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Director Beckett, please go ahead.
I'd like to make the motion that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve a permanent Banfield tipping fee voucher policy.
Seconded by Director Steer. Any further comments? Director Sparrow, please go ahead.
Thank you. So if a person was to have a house in Banfield and demolish the house, they could bring all that waste into the Alberni landfill. We'll say free, but not really free, without paying the $145 per ton that we pay in the valley, just because they brought all the way in. It wouldn't be a commercial. It'd be if I tore my own personal property down. Would that work?
Really good scenario. I love the way you're thinking. So when I review the policy, because we haven't run into that before, and it's not something that was contemplated, because that would be construction and demolition waste. The intention of the policy is to be specific to like mattresses or like big items, and you're going to be taking a haul out anyhow, but not to do, and it doesn't apply to commercial. However, I guess there would be an odd situation where an individual was doing a construction demolition project and hauling that in. I think maybe that's one of the benefits of moving from a voucher system to a waiver policy, because we have to review what the purpose is. And so staff would get to oversee that. But I think that it is worth just doing a double check on that to make sure that because that is not the intention, right? Like someone, if they were doing a demolition, would have to responsibly manage that.
Thinking. So if a person was to do a contract to replace a house, and the contractor, but not a commercial property, but a commercial business, if someone says commercial properties here, would be able to work its way through the system.
I think we can, I think it's really great that you brought this up. And in our 5-6 years that we've done this, it's not been an issue and the volumes have been very low. So we haven't run into this, but I think we should and can modify that for clarity so that that doesn't apply. So not for commercial businesses, not for commercial properties, and not for like construction demolition projects. And we can just do that in the scope amendment, I think. It's really like the mattresses are one of the ones that we really see that people will leave lying around at the transfer station, whereas if they know they can just dump it at the landfill for free, they will haul it. And that definitely is more than $20 worth of their effort, and our cost to haul out. So, yeah.
So since we've brought this up and this is a policy, not a bylaw, what we can do is pass an amending bylaw to include those considerations in the policy now, so we don't have to come back to the table. I hate to do this to Cynthia, but are you willing to, and if Bob is willing to second it, put forward an amending motion to include those things, like those considerations?
Sure, as long as you word it for me.
Yeah. Jenny listed off the
Jenny will
three
do it.
things that can be incorporated into the motion.
Policy says right now, this policy does not apply to commercial properties. We would replace that line with, this policy does not apply to commercial properties, commercial businesses, or construction and demolition projects of a large nature.
Bob, is that all right? Yeah, so we'll say that Director Beckett seconds the amending motion. So this is on the amending motion now. So any further comments? I want to be a butt and just start asking questions. Well, what about this? What about that? But I'm not going to. We had a long talk about smokehouses at Huet, so that's where I'm at. So all those in favor of the amending motion? Okay, motion carried. And now the amending motion will incorporate those considerations into the main motion, passing the policy. Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. So my mind is also going, what about this and what about that? And can we maybe defer this and have staff take another look at it and come back with another motion?
It is not an urgent matter. We can definitely defer this.
And we can also update the policy next time as well, since we already have a motion that has these other considerations. So not that it'll matter, but we can always come back next meeting as well, if that's okay.
That sounds great. So do I need to make a motion to defer then?
How about we just pass this motion and then we'll just put it on the agenda for the next meeting or the next month's meeting?
Okay, that
Yeah.
sounds great.
Okay. Okay, so for the amended motion, we have that considerations. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor of the modified motion? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. And what we'll do is not for the next meeting, but the next respective meeting in June. Maybe we just put it on the agenda to see if there's anything that comes up. Maybe it comes up in a committee. So, all right. I don't think we need a motion for that. So we'll bring it into item C, which is the Albany Valley Landfill Tipping Fee Regulation Bylaw Amendment, R10298. Please go ahead, Jenny.
So when we originally talked about this was during financial plan deliberations. So we'll be doing them back to back, the Albany Valley Landfill and then as well the West Coast Landfill, and we're looking to update the tipping fees. So when we did our financial plan and we looked at what the costs were for these services and where we needed to take them, we presented to the board that we need to increase revenues for 2024 and moving forward based on increased regulation, increased costs. And so we looked at the option to, of course, increase taxation or increase tipping fees. The board was supportive of staff's recommendation that we increase tipping fees. There's some other reasons why we choose usually when we can in solid waste to use tipping fees as our source of revenue versus taxes. People don't like taxes. And people usually have an understanding of paying for what you use. So those are generally more socially acceptable ways of generating revenue. For us, another one we've seen over the years is that we see leakage coming in, and we call leakage is like garbage from other regions will leak into our region if our rate is too low. And we used to have that quite a bit. And so we've realized that we need to keep up with our neighbors on our rates for that reason. We are a little bit lower than our neighbors. I think Nanaimo is currently 145 as of April. And for just your base municipal solid waste rate, and Comox is 155 per ton, and we're now 140. So what we're proposing is that we move up to 145 as of July 1st and 150 for January. And so we've run the financial models, and then that will generate enough revenue to cover off what our expected costs are for the next 5 years. We took that to the board during financial plan deliberations, and then we went to each of the respective committees. So in your agenda package, you'll see the motions from the Alberni Valley Bamfield Committee, as well as the West Coast Committee with the recommendation to do these increases. We also did look at the construction waste base tipping fee. That is our other, like the municipal solid waste is where we get most of our revenue. That's where most of the garbage comes in from. The second biggest category is construction and demolition waste. And so we're looking to adjust those as well. And again, keeping in line with our neighbors. And this is sort of in line with the plan. And I apologize that this is so late coming because we were actually going to redo the entire bylaw from scratch. And we realized it was just going to take too long. So now it's simply an amendment, but do expect to see a brand new bylaw later this year, which will be very nice.
Okay, any comments? Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Yes, hi. So I have a couple questions here. You're raising these rates way higher than inflation. Some of these are 7 or 10% increases per year. I'm looking at the Alberni landfill budget predictions, and the budget predictions for expenses are much closer to CPI numbers than actually what's being predicted here. So how come our expenses are going up so much more than what is actually being predicted? Are we diverting too much and not getting enough revenue from that? I feel like we're hammering the consumer a lot. If you're going to build a house, you got construction waste. We're hammering the consumer a lot with these increases. Is it warranted? I'm trying to get some more additional information on where these revenues are coming from, how they're being spent. Why are the tipping fees going up so much? We just had a 66% increase in the cost per bag, which is just directly on consumers. And our stated goal is to increase diversion. And I'm just going to make sure I'm going to say this right. Discourage waste and increase diversion. So we're raising costs to discourage waste. It's kind of like a carbon tax, pay more to use less. So we got to make sure we're doing the right thing here, not just putting costs on the consumer. Maybe we got to look at dropping our costs, look at that more. I'd like some more details on that before we start raising costs by 7 or 10% per year, every year on every tipping fee. Thank you.
Through the chair, excellent point on the idea that increased garbage rates encourages people to divert. So when you've got curbside, the encouragement is due to the size of the bin and the frequency of collection. And so when we are setting up the curbside collection program, we have really big recycling bins, big organic bins, small infrequent garbage bins. For everyone who has overflow to that, and those are self-hauling, they're paying for the waste that they generate. So I know if I'm making a decision whether I'm going to take a run to 3rd Avenue Depot and recycle this flexible plastic, or geez, I'm probably not going to have to pay anything because it's going to fit in my bin, I will make the easy decision, right? If it's low cost and easy, I will do that. So we want to make garbage, we want to disincentivize that. We disincentivize that with making it a cost and that it is higher than the other costs. We also do have to have a level of cost recovery. So even in some streams of recycling that we pay for, we do have to charge for those, like mattresses. However, recycling in general, right now, because it is covered by Recycle BC, there is no cost to residents if they take it to the depot, so that is free. And so we can encourage people to pull the recycling out of your garbage so you're not paying for it and you can drop it for free. Similarly, we try to have a lower rate for organics, and we've continued to do that. I think the rate is still 110 or 115. I'd have to look in the bylaw schedule. And so again, keeping the garbage rate higher than the organics or recycling to encourage diversion. Another point that you mentioned originally was about the CPI. So CPI is measured through the Consumer Price Index, and landfills don't fit well into that. It's not a very good comparable. What is more comparable is if we look at the other landfills and the other rates that they're charging. So the cost per ton for other landfills to operate is reflective as to the cost pressures that they're seeing. So landfills are getting higher regulations and environmental standards that we have to meet. We are regulated to do closure and post-closure amounts. So when we're building our long-term financial model, we're building in that amount. And it is a large amount of money that we have to put towards closure, post-closure activities to make sure we're managing that responsibly. Our environmental impacts are significantly increasing, and that's been going on for a long time. And the operation costs. So the operation contract. We know what the costs are. We know what our costs are going to be. These are all projected out on actual costs. So it's not just a CPI in general. When we built the financial plan for the 5 years coming up, we looked at what are our costs? What do we need to do to manage this responsibly? And this was the difference when we did the projections on what the costs are, and then we calculated it back on revenue. We basically need to generate X number of revenue, and we have to do that through two options.
So just as a follow-up, if I can, Chair. So we need to make more money. Are we seeing a reduction in the number of bags and stuff that is coming to the landfill? We need to raise prices to keep revenue neutral. Follow-up is I went and compared all the other costs on the island here, and some of our costs are similar, and some of them for like little bags are way more. So you can go to Comox and Nanaimo and drop off 100 kilograms of stuff for $8. We are nowhere close to that for the little consumer just taking stuff to the dump on unweighed loads. So comparing ourselves to other people is one thing, but we're the Alberni Valley. We don't have to raise our prices just to meet everyone else's. And I realize there's leakage, but we got to think about ourselves. Thank you.
If I may, so the $8 comparison. So when we get into the per bag rate, which is currently at $5 a bag, other regional districts, so the Comox Valley they don't do bag charges. We're the only ones who have a bag charge. So the option, we do have a minimum weighed rate. And our minimum, I will look it up because I have it here in the agenda. So our minimum charge is $15 for weighed rates. Just double checking on that. So when you go to Comox, it's $10. That's the minimum you can pay regardless of what you bring. And in Nanaimo, it's $8. So we do have the bag rate, which is $5. So if you only have one bag, you do pay technically less because people like the bag rate. If the board would like us to explore a different style that is similar to the other regional districts, we can. I don't know if it makes a difference. We do hear from the customers that they still like to measure it by bags. The other thing is we don't have two scales. So at the Alberni Valley and at the West Coast, we have one scale. So the scale lineups can get significant for us, whereas in Nanaimo and Comox, they weigh you in and weigh you out no matter what. And we do a bag rate because then it's one less person in line that you're waiting for if you are having to do a weighed rate.
Okay, thank you. Director Roth?
Thank you. I received a letter or an email from Broombusters, and I'd just like to read it out because it's to do with broom season landfill tipping fee. Good morning. I hope you can help us. I wanted to join in the chorus of unhappy Broombusters to plead with the ACRD to rescind their decision to charge everyone the tipping fee at broom season. While we've managed to get them waived for our administrators for a couple of events, the new policy is counterintuitive to helping our small but dedicated Broombusters team in tackling this giant. Broom cutting is finally gaining momentum in Alberni Valley, and people are understanding and accepting that it's a problem. It'd be a shame to interfere with that by introducing obstacles like dump fees. I have no problem with the staff at the landfill being specific that the loads are just broom. I'm sure Randy Thean from FireSmart would agree that residents will be forced to dump it in the woods or burn it. This ruling was a surprise to us so close to the season and probably could have been better communicated so that we're not giving out incorrect information and incurring a wrath of residents that assume it's free. Last year's $1,100 ACRD grant is being used up in chipping and hauling since the ACRD doesn't provide either as in the city. So as you can see, the ACRD has just made our little band of volunteers a more difficult job unnecessarily. So if you could please respond and see how we can help out the Broombusters, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I probably want to take that back and talk to my solid waste team and figure out what's been going on with the broom before responding, and I can bring a report back to the board. I also do note that, we do have a waiver policy. So if they're doing broom busting, we'd be happy to waive those fees. But I will look to see what we've been doing and what the correspondence has been. Thank you.
Great. Any more comments or questions? Dr. Mastrangelo?
I heard it in your explanation, but I didn't see it in the notes. The cost for construction and demolition without recyclables, that's the adjustments that we're looking on. Or there's two separates, one demolition without recycling and demolition costs with recyclables in it. Are those two separate?
So, and I might have caused a bit of confusion when I was explaining it. So construction demolition, we're looking to increase the rate, and it would be, we would expect you not to have recycling in it. So that's our expectation. And we tell people that, make sure you've got all the scrap metal out. We're looking to increase that to 180 as of July 1st and as of January 1st to 185. However, any materials, whether it's a load, whether of construction waste or regular municipal solid waste, if it is full of recycling, we charge double the load. So it's a double rate, exactly whatever the rate is. So it's just double.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, are there any motions moving forward? Thank you. Dr. Haggard, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the Alberni Claycott Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to bylaw R1029-8 amendment, Alberni Valley landfill tipping fee and regulation bylaw.
Seconded by Dr. Steer. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
I'd like to move that the Alberni Claycott Regional District Board of Directors give second reading to bylaw R1029-8 amendment, Alberni Valley landfill tipping fee and regulation bylaw.
Thank you, Dr. Steer, for seconding. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
I'd like to move that the Alberni Claycott Regional District Board of Directors give third reading to bylaw R1029-8 amendment, Alberni Valley landfill tipping fee and regulation bylaw.
Seconded by Dr. Steer. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
I'd like to move that the Alberni Claycott Regional District Board of Directors adopt bylaw R1029-8 amendment, Alberni Valley landfill tipping fee and regulation bylaw.
Thank you, Dr. Steer. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Question, Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. Question through the chair to Ms. Brun. Will we be seeing the new bylaw coming forward before the end of the year, and will we be able to see it before it comes to the board for any input?
That's a good question. Well, we're working with our new administration manager to try and update some of our older bylaws. And we're at like -8 now. So I think it would be a good time to basically refresh and renew the bylaws. And we're actually investigating whether it's time to do just one bylaw, whether we have the legal authority to do that. Again, just consistency and those kinds of things. We could do the bylaw in 3 readings and then in adoption, or, we can bring it forward that way. We usually just for efficiency do it with all of the readings stacked up and the final adoption, but we can definitely bring it as a pre.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to item D, which is a request for decision regarding the West Coast landfill tipping fee bylaw amendment. Go ahead, Jenny.
So this is the exact same conversation for the West Coast landfill. We are keeping our rates consistent on both the West Coast Waste Service as well as the Alberni Valley Waste Service. If there's other questions on this one, there is really no other difference with the bylaws.
Dr. Steer.
Thank you. I'll move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to bylaw R1033-6 amendment, West Coast landfill tipping and regulation bylaw.
Seconded by Director Johnson. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. You can just say second reading.
Move second reading.
Second reading moved, seconded by Director Johnson. Further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Move third reading.
Third reading moved, seconded by Director Johnson. Thank you. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, all opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank
And I'll
you.
move adoption.
And adoption moved, seconded by Director Johnson. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to the next item, E. Oh, next page. Regarding grant funding application to the Island Coastal Economic Trust Capital and Innovation Program, Jenny/Mark, please go ahead.
Excellent. So this is great news because we recently brought the preliminary design, sort of a pre-design and siding options for our terminal building because we are over capacity and we need to look to the future. So we had a really good report done that looked at those different options and decided where we should be looking at it and what the general cost is going to be to both build it, but also design it. So now with that report, we're able to go and apply for grant funding for the design, which will be the next phase. The cost estimate on that was $450,000. We will see when we go out for bids what that actually comes in at. But we have a grant opportunity and the board supported us in applying for grants and we have found one, which is excellent. You might remember this one from the MUP. It is ICE-T. So ICE-T is great because it is a stackable grant. So once, if we are successful in this and we think that we have a lot of good points, we're actually going to meet with the ICE-T people to make sure that we're hitting all of their key grant approval points. And if we're successful, then we'll be seeking out the difference in grant funding from other opportunities. So we are not looking to finance this with our meager savings at the airport. But if we are successful, I think we get quite a bit of time to find other grant funding opportunities. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, yeah, I'm on the board for ICE-T, so Brody and Denise are quite good, so they will definitely help you with an application if there's anything missing, that kind of thing. Any further comments? Dr. Boyko and then Dr. Patella.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Quick question. When you mean by overcapacity, what do we mean? How many flights in and out are we talking about are actually going in and out to Tofino now? Thank you.
Oh, excellent question. I don't have the stats right with me. Mark could like run those off. But we are sort of like even case zero is like besides the growth that we'll need in the next 5 to 10 years. When we've got our flights running in the summer, like during COVID, we had to set up tents outside. We just had far too much traffic going through and we didn't have the spacing. I've been in there when we have the flights landing and it's crowded. So you've got a whole, group coming in. The great news, great problem to have, is that we've got even more flights coming and going. Pacific Coastal has upped their frequency, which is nice, and we see that trend happening. So I'm sorry I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can get those for you. They were all included in the last report that came to the board.
Perfect. Quick, as a follow-up, how many flights are going in and out of the Port Alberni Aerodrome? Do we have any numbers for that, please?
We do not have a flight tracking system. So because at the Tofino Airport, we actually have Port Hardy that does our air traffic controlling, and they basically know every single flight that's coming in and out of there. We also have passenger counts because that is what Pacific Coastal has to report to us. So we've got great data in Tofino. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of data for Port Alberni. I believe that we have asked the caretaker to do some it won't be as scientific or good data as we would get from Port McNeill, but we do have our caretaker who's going to start tracking that information because we do know it is of significant interest to people and especially the board. So we're going to try really hard to get some numbers for you soon.
The taxpayer would love to know that. Thank you.
Agreed.
Great. And Dr. Patella?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, when you say we're looking to the future and it's great news that there's more flights coming in, that seems kind of conclusory. And I'm wondering what analysis that's based on. Is it a good thing to have more flights coming in? Economically, probably, but is it a good thing for the West Coast to have more flights, to have more planes disturbing the airspace over top of the reserve at Pacific Rim Park? What kind of considerations towards really thinking towards the future have been made?
That's great big picture thinking. I don't.
Daniel, then I might call on a few West Coast directors.
We go. So great question and multifaceted question. We are working with Cloquet Nation. We have an MOU for the airport, and we are looking at how it is that airport lands, how the airport lands can be engaged and used. I will flag that for the nation and certainly for Tofino, and I believe Ucluelet is in that boat as well. Tourism is a staple economic driver, and it is an overt direction that they're moving in. And I will flag for the nation as well, who has been lobbying really hard to get the province to do what they just did recently, which is acknowledge their tribal park and the land base as being protected so that it is not going to be forest. And that is a pivot from the nation, who isn't engaged in forestry, but again, acknowledging a strategy, Tla'ukwit Nation, thank you, who's a pivot. It's a pivot in terms of their strategy and ensuring that tourism is an active part of what they do. They have their Guardian program, where it's a volunteer program, where there are contributions, usually around 1 to 3%, that goes in voluntarily towards the nation. So tourism is a big part of their strategy. And so based on that strategy, having people off the roads and onto planes is an effective way of making sure that that tourism is growing. The other thing that air traffic brings is perhaps a slightly different problem, but when people come in by plane, they tend to have reservations and know exactly where they're staying for the night. When people drive in, that is not always the case. And what we've seen with people driving in is that we run into the issue of dispersed camping and people staying on backcountry roads, which increases likelihood of fire, increases illegal dumping and garbage, and incurs additional costs. So the flight passenger tends to be a little more organized and a little bit easier to manage in terms of their engagement. Now, beyond that, we would have to go into a full feasibility study and look at different elements to talk about the claim. But we have as direction to grow the use of the airport, because the use of the airport increases revenues at the airport, and the revenues that come in decrease the requirement for taxation on the taxpayer. And so it is a good business driver for the area.
Thank you. So I'm probably just going to call on a few West Coast directors. Director Steer, did you want to start?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. And I think Daniel reiterated all the points that I had sat down here. The conversations with Tla'ukwit First Nation and we have an MOU, and those conversations around their economic future and their well-being are well engaged. And the other area from Tofino's perspective, we are in the midst of revamping our tourism master plan with deep conversations with our destination marketing organization, Tourism Tofino, and with the local businesses that are dependent upon the economics of tourism. Very supportive, of course, of this work. In fact, one of our accommodation providers, large accommodation, provides a lot of services for our airport in terms of the marketing of, and et cetera, et cetera. And then the other, and I think maybe some of the questions that you may have been referring to around climate change potentially, and some of the issues that may be related to air travel, and that's another full conversation. But in terms of other smaller aspects, you may remember our road closures that we've had as of last year with Cameron Lake, as well as 5 years of having that road inaccessible in many ways. There's also safety concerns, and having that airport as a functional airport to provide those types of safety and health services are paramount for the West Coast. So it has been highly supported, and we're at this point in time very supportive of this expansion project. And unless there's more comments, eventually I will make the motion for that.
We'll come back.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you. I just just knowing that the closure was just last year, and it feels like 10 years ago to me. Dr. McEwen, go ahead.
Yes, very supportive of the growth at the airport, and I don't have a lot to add to what's been said already, but unrelated to our airport, Harbour Air had approached us last fall looking to expand their service into Ucluelet. And so it would be a triangle, Vancouver, Tofino, Ucluelet. And I thought combining that with our new West Coast transit system would be really great for people to fly in, spend an afternoon at the beach, and fly back out again. So as a resort municipality, of course, tourism is paramount, and very supportive of the airport expansion.
Very good points. Anyone else would like to say anything? Director Mastrangelo, any comments at all? No? Okay. Very good question. Thank you, Director Vitale. Are there any other questions or comments, or go straight to Director Steer? Dr. Steer, please go ahead.
I'll move that the Alberni Clackwood Regional District Board of Directors support the grant funding application to Island Coastal Economic Trust for funding the design of new terminal building at the Long Beach Airport.
Second.
Seconded by Director McEwen. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, item F is Agricultural Water Assessment Study Funding Opportunity for Watershed Security Fund and Local Government Climate Action Program. Or that's where it's coming from, sorry. Mike, are you online?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Yes, just to quickly introduce this, there's two recommendations before the board. The first is to apply for a grant for $35,000, which would supplement the $10,000 grant that the regional district already has from Investment Agriculture and would be the full amount needed to do this work. And the second recommendation is that if this $35,000 grant application is unsuccessful, that the board commit up to $35,000 from the LG CAP funding that is already in place to complete this work. And the goal of this work is to secure long-term agricultural water supply within the Alberni Valley. And that sort of summarizes it. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Question through the chair to Mr. Erg. So this is for the Alberni Valley. So this is all areas in the Alberni Valley? Thank you.
That is correct, yes.
Would that include the city of Port Alberni?
It would include sort of for the farming components within the city of Port Alberni. And this is funded through the agriculture program, which is part of the regional planning service. So that includes the city of Port Alberni.
Thank you. Dr. Boyko, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Question for Mr. Erg. What will be the actual outcome that comes out of this? If we're going to spend $35,000 in taxpayer money, what are we actually going to get? Are we going to have just some meetings and then like a presentation? Or are we going to get some actual concrete steps, like a map of here's all the water that exists in the Alberni Valley, here's prediction what's going to happen in the next 5 years, and here's where the water needs to go and how we're going to get it there? Like, what will we actually get out of this funding?
Yeah. So and again, as we do the work, the goal would be as you described, the concrete part, like what types of options for irrigation are available. And I think one of the other things in talking with Amy Needham is options for larger retention ponds. So looking at how we could what kind of options it would be for improving the agriculture, the water needed to produce the agriculture products on the land that's available. That was certainly something that was identified in the 2011 Ag Plan. Is a substantial amount of water, I think it's identified in the report, would be required to fully realize the potential with the ALR land within the Alberni Valley.
And thank you.
Chair, if I can have a quick follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So some of the information that's coming up in the ag development meetings is drought information through licenses for 2024. So that's going to apply to starting now for the rest of the next summer. Apply preparedness, review your license terms, get ready to shift your water if use demands, store water, and be prepared to be told what to do with your water based on government stuff. Natural resource officers have authority to enter your land and make sure you are compliant with the Water Sustainability Act. So there's lots of things in the background that are happening here that go towards government control of water for agricultural use. So I just want to make sure that's in everyone's mind that is happening and that's being applied across the province right now. So if you have a water license, you will be told when you can use it and when you can't, which may be detrimental to crops and animals. Thank you. And the farmer is going to lose control.
Thank you, Dr. Boyko. I had a comment/question, but maybe I'll hold off until after Dr. Sparrow. Go ahead.
So my question actually is about water licenses too. So are you going to map out all the water licenses that are in the valley and how many acre feet they are, so we all know what is being used and what is available as part of the study, or just going to be on surface water?
No, this will be all options for water. Surface water, licensed water, potential irrigation, and what an irrigation district could look like, as well as on-site storage and I think some options for on-site storage. And I'm sort of being really brief and glancing over it. And then a lot of what you're talking about with the water licenses and what each water license, the volume of water, et cetera, applies. It is available, and certainly can be included in the study, as well as I think part of what Director Boyko was talking to is when there's multiple water licenses, say on an individual stream, for example. Different licenses will have different priorities, and there's beyond just fish flows and things like that. So, but there will be if there's say 4 A, B, C, D licenses, A may have priority over the 3 below, and sometimes that's set out in the water licenses as well. So looking at those things, and again, if an individual farmer is going to start some sort of more intensive production that needs a guarantee of water, that becomes really important. As far as making sure they have access to that water year over year, because there's a lot of investment goes into the land. When you even start production and then going into, say, a set of crops, etc. So,
thank you.
Hopefully that answered your question.
I have Dr. Cote and then Dr. Roth.
Thank you. So through the chair, to the board, actually, I'm sitting on the Somas fish flow, and we've been talking about water licenses along the Somas River and Sproat River, and how the province manages that and how it is first in line is who gets the right to the water first. So it's really coming more to the surface as to how the regional district is going to move forward with water management. I think that I've been talking about this. I did ask at budget time for us to put some money into a new service, water management, for the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District. We all have water problems, drought, flood, and I think it needs to be managed in a proper way. So what brings to mind right now with looking at this application, would this also include fisheries? Because fisheries is agriculture under the agricultural umbrella. So having that included in this is quite important, because fish need the water in the rivers. And if the license says that you can't take the water out for your land agriculture, farming, then there's a balance there that has to happen. So right now I'm sitting on this Somas fish flow and trying to understand the water management. Catalyst owns the water infrastructure, the weir and plates on Sproat River and Great Central Lake Dam, and the water line that goes to the city. So managing those water infrastructure is important, as to all the licenses along the river as well. So it's a big picture. I don't think $35,000 is enough, but thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cote. Director Roth, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious, I heard Mike mention irrigation district, and is that leading up to a service area, or is that the end goal? And also, just a little comment here, some areas in the interior, especially the highly agriculture areas, they have double water mains, one for raw water, one for treated water. And I don't know, just an idea that perhaps this could be going that way. Thanks. Mike,
if I can.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think this work would include, exploring what an irrigation district could look like. I'm not going to sort of prejudge what the outcomes could be, or that's the purpose of the work as far as that. But the as far as options for an irrigation district, I think that has to be part of this part of this work. And just I wanted to make sure that all of the directors were aware that this application, this grant application, and the requests in here are for the $35,000, which would be on top of the $100,000 that's already in place from Investment Agriculture. So that the whole project would be $135,000.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so my only comment would be to maybe use Treaty Nations as a template, but at some point the Hoop-Etchisit and the Tishot First Nations will assert rights over water in the future. And so when when Director Cote touched on this directly, at some point the Indigenous communities in the valley will be talking about protecting their right to having, stream water for fish, but also potentially claiming water as well in their watersheds. So those considerations need to be at least ballparked. I don't think you're going to be able to determine, because I don't even know. Like, it feels like Hoop-Etchisit and Tishot will likely go down more of a Chilcotin route for asserting rights and title. And as a result of that, I don't know what Chilcotin is looking at for their access to water and that sort of thing. So when we're looking at the very top level, like off the top, the province will likely be looking at any arrangements being held by those two nations in the valley as being something that happens first. So those considerations will probably need to be at least alluded to, if not figured into it exactly, especially if we're looking further out, like more than 5-10 years in the future. It will happen eventually, and it's probably going to change the way that the valley operates from some fundamental levels. So just like, we got to think about that. That being said, I think we've talked this out fairly well. So I guess that's the only advice I would bring. I can't help you in figuring that out, but I think it's important to note. We do have two motions here. So one is to get the grant funding, and if we don't, we still pay for it in the event that we don't. Everyone willing to move the motion? Thank you, Director Cote. The motion is that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors support the grant funding application to the Watershed Security Fund for up to $35,000 to conduct an agricultural water assessment in the Alberni Valley. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Johnson. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. No, the next one. Do you want to move the next one?
I'll move the second motion.
Okay, it says that if the application is unsuccessful, the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve funding up to a maximum of $35,000 from the Local Government Climate Action Program Fund for the Agricultural Water Assessment Study in the Alberni Valley. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Haggard. Any further comments? Dr. Patella, please go ahead.
Just wondering then if the combination of those two motions would result in a total of $35,000, i.e. if the grant is applied for but it only comes in at 20, is 15 then coming out of the local government?
Yeah. My reading is up to a maximum of, so it would top it off. Thank you for pointing that out. Any further comments, Dr. Sparrow?
Thank you. So it says it's going to come out of the Government Climate Action Plan program. So where's the money sitting right now that we're taking it out of?
Mike?
That the LGCAP funding, the regional district already has. So if we get the other grant application, motion 1, then we wouldn't be using the LGCAP funding, and it could be allocated to something else.
So some of it's been allocated, but it's mostly for adaptation, mitigation, and there's one other activity, general activity under that program. So this would probably fall under adaptation. It would fall under the actual program's terms of reference. So
that's correct.
Yeah, okay. So Director Sparrow asked if the money's just kind of sitting there unallocated. Mike, do you want to take that one?
Yes. Yes, it is.
The answer is yes. So there's money that we were given for climate action. So they're several large categories for climate action that we can use the money for. Watershed is definitely one of them. So it's probably a good use because it's the first time we've come up with something. But you can look at air quality, you can look at planning for berms in the event of floods and that sort of thing. And Director Cote keeps pointing out, weirs and infrastructure as well. So those are things that we can look at. Who gets assigned to look at that as a subcommittee is probably EAs. I don't know, but I think that's a further conversation. Daniel, did you have any input?
You answered correctly. I mean, the LCAP funding is multi-year as well, and so we didn't allocate all of it. They gave an initial amount, and then we're going to be revisiting with new policies and programs that come through. So we did allocate, and as part of the 2024 budget, some of the funds, but not all of the funds. So what this would be doing is ultimately saying, look, we're going to tap into those additional funds because this project is a priority that does directly relate to the work we're doing today.
Yeah, and based off the conversations we've been having, for me personally, it's always emergency related, so I'm always adaptation mitigation. But for others, and I think very importantly, is the agricultural aspect of water. And then Dr. Cote has noted the flood mapping and those kind of related activities, as well as the, I don't know what it's called, the weir and the plate and that sort of thing. Those kind of infrastructure pieces. Those feel like the things we should investigate first because they're the things we talk about, but there may be other opportunities to investigate climate action activities. So like I said, we should just assign it to a group and then a list come up at that point. Okay. All right. With that in mind, we do have a motion moved for the second one, I believe, and it's been seconded, but I didn't note who did second it. I think it was Dr. McEwen. Who was it? No, I didn't. It was Haggard, sorry. Okay. Any further comments on the second motion? This is just a top up, as Dr. Patella has noted. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item G, which is the ACRD Elections and Assent Voting Bylaw A1089-1 Amendment. Cynthia, please go ahead.
Okay, so we have the ACRD Elections and Assent Voting Bylaw, A1089-1 amendment, and this is to remove the mandatory requirement to hold a second advanced voting opportunity in areas with population of less than 5,000. And this is in accordance with the Local Government Act, Section 107(2), which states that for electoral areas with a population of less than 1,000, we are not required to hold a second advance voting. And staff feel that it is sufficient that we have the mail-in ballots to provide the opportunity for people to vote, as well as the chief electoral officer can call special voting opportunities if needed. And this is just a cost-efficient measure for where we have, the smaller populations, where a second voting opportunity isn't necessary.
Thank you. So when you mean second voting opportunity, the second in person, like having a polling station?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. For comments, we have Drs. Boyko and then Roth. Please go ahead, Dr. Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. First off, I'd like to make this a recorded vote, so please do that, Corporate Officer. And I would like to say that we have several large votes coming up, not just the election in a couple of years, but we have an aquatic center that's going to go to every electoral area. We have the Banfield sewer system, which is an enormous cost for a small population. They're going to have a referendum in the November timeline. So any chance that we will restrict the ability for a voter to vote on these things, I will not be in support of, and I don't think anyone else should be. If we're going to be prepared to spend $21 million on the sewer system in Banfield, and we're going to try and save $3,000 in voting, that's not the way to go. Give the people a chance to vote. If we're going to spend $78 million on an aquatic center, people need to have the chance to vote as much as they can. A lot of people in this valley do not work in this valley. They travel outside the valley for jobs, and a lot of the industrial opportunities in this valley are now gone. People work in Alberta, people work all over the place. So they need the chance to come back and vote. Please do not take that away. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Roth?
Yeah, I feel the same way that Director Boyko feels. I'm against this. I think that people need more of an opportunity to vote, not less of an opportunity. It's, to make a better democracy. So I'm hoping that everyone agrees that we don't remove things. It's better to add in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. And any further comments? Daniel, did you have a comment? Please go ahead.
Yeah, like I appreciate the perspective, and I just want to share from a staff perspective, that's not the way we were seeing it. It's not about removing a vote. It really was about placing that control in the hands of the local group that is making that vote. So right now, the legislation says you have to. But in some cases, there could be a better plan or a different plan that's developed, and the rest of the rules and tools that are there really put the control in the local community. In this case, we're talking about Bamfield. There could be a better way of doing that vote, and so a place like Bamfield, we've already had discussions around, should we have an east side and west side vote? Is it an unnecessary barrier to have people having to take a boat to cross over, and what happens if there's bad weather when that occurs? So rather than take something very prescriptive, we're saying, look, at a certain number, we don't want to necessarily force that approach, but it doesn't mean that we would not have a plan that comes back to the board that says this is our plan for the election, and the chief election officer is still in a position to call at least that or more, depending on the needs of the community. So from the staff perspective, we're saying let's shift away from a prescribed mandate and allow a plan to be developed that's reflective of the community. So just a different perspective. And again, just saying where we're coming from on the explanation, and I'm seeing a big no, but from Director Boyko, and that's fair. I just wanted to make sure that we were clarifying where we're coming from to create that additional option.
All right, thank you. Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you. An observation and a comment, and I'll begin with, perhaps we should go back to the community of Bamfield and identify what is being proposed, and that's correct me if I'm wrong, a mail-in ballot and then an all-day in-person opportunity. And dropping the one in-person opportunity for a cost savings, and find out if that is acceptable to the community via the Bamfield Community Affairs Society. So that's an observation or a comment that I made. The other comment, and I may through the chair ask Jenny to comment, but I constantly hear X amount of money that it's going to cost the community. And I've always been under the impression that the process in which we are engaging the community is to help ACRD staff and the consultant and perhaps HFN look at the feedback to date and massage the project, recognizing that there may be opportunities to adjust the costs as we move forward. So I'm concerned about throwing a number out and being being recorded if in fact I'm right about the process being able to make corrections as we move forward. Thank you.
Right, through the chair. Yeah, so specific to the Bamfield sewer referendum that we're planning for the fall, which is why we're bringing this to the board now. With Bamfield, when we sat down to look at what is the best way to give everyone in Bamfield a chance to vote on this and make sure that they're engaged, the legislation allows for us to go down to one advance vote for a community of this size. That's great. And so that's why we've brought this here. That's an option. We can reduce the requirement. Bamfield specifically, we really do feel that the mail-in option is going to be utilized the most. We're going to be promoting it the most. We're also looking at the other component, which is like the advertising stuff and how do we make sure people hear about this. So we really do sit thoughtfully, and we have 2 or 3 times now to plan out a good referendum because we really do want people to vote and to get that opportunity. So with this, if we don't change the bylaw, we will have 3 in-person voting times in Bamfield. We feel that that might not be required. That's probably in excess of what is needed, because if you have 2 different voting options in person and the mail-in option, which we're going to be promoting and providing because it's going to be November, so a lot of residents don't want to drive out, who don't live there in November, don't want to drive out to Bamfield to go vote. They're going to want to mail in their ballot anyhow. So we're really going to be promoting and supporting that option to vote. When it comes to cost, I think that because we have the financial section, we do need to recognize that to send out staff to basically staff a in-person polling event for a day, there is a value to that. This project and this referendum is funded under Community Works funding and some small other grants that we received. And in regards to the flexibility of the referendum, I think Director Beckett is very correct. Our intent with this entire service is to, when we're establishing any service, any new service, is to work with the community. We are a local government. We provide services at the request and for the benefit of the community. So in this one, we have flexed a lot because we've had to go out to say, you know, what are the service areas? What do you even want to vote on? Do you want to vote? Do you need that? Like, we really need to engage with the community to make sure that we're creating a service that they want. It's for them. We will run it if they want it. If they don't, we won't, and we can set up whatever they need. We're trying to to nail things down though. So we have set a date for November 15th that we're working for. That also helps the community because they need to have some clarity on where we're moving towards, and then also getting them to engage and ask questions. So I have started to refer to this project as sort of like Jell-O that is starting to set a bit, and we're okay with it being a little like jiggly at first until it sets into the form that we're looking at. We can make changes as we go still, especially if we receive significant feedback that there needs to be change. But I think to date, we've got pretty much the scope in hand, and so we'll continue moving forward. I hope I've answered your questions, Director Beckett.
Thanks. Director Boyko and then Director Steer.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to remind people that this will apply not just to Bamfield, but will apply in the future to every regional district for every vote and referendum in the future moving forward. So this is very wide ranging, even though the Bamfield sewer thing will be coming up soon. So please put that in the back of your mind. Jenny just said we're trying to get as much public input and encourage as much voting as possible and getting the voice of the people. Restricting this and taking away voting day to save one person to drive to Bamfield and back to record things is the wrong way to do it. Encourage people to vote. Give them the chance to do it. Give them the chance to take the day off, get to where they need to go, and do the right thing. Taking away a voting day is backwards for democracy. That's what Canada stands for. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Steer?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, and I do commiserate with Director Boyko's around the opportunities in the democratic process, and at a time and place where we know as much support for democracy in our abilities to cast our votes, we need to be increasing those opportunities. I 100% support him. And my concern, and I think it has been answered in here, was this would apply not just to this particular referendum, but would apply to as the amendment, as I'm reading, the amendment would apply to all referendums moving forward. So it would be difficult for me to support this amendment for just that reason, that specific to, and as staff pointed out, I fully comprehend and understand the reasoning for particularly in Bamfield's situation and having Director Beckett follow up with that. I do respect that. At the same time, I've just been noting regionally as well as in the larger context that we need to be supporting our ability abilities to have the electorate, the voters, be able to state their opinion. And the way that we do that most effectively is through voting. So I won't be able to support this recommendation.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further comments? Director Boyko, go ahead.
Should we make a motion to decline this motion then, please?
I don't know what the next thing, it could just be do nothing and have a motion to go to the next
How
agenda.
about a motion that we
Yeah.
will not make this requested decision? We'll vote on it, we'll record those votes, and we'll move on to the next topic.
Oh, yeah. So like somebody moves it and seconds it and then it's defeated and then it just dies first reading or something like that.
We don't even have to move it.
Yeah, that's the thing. But we should have a motion that actually says that we're not going to do it. Daniel, go ahead.
It's not inappropriate to pass a motion to decline. You can do that. And again, like that, this is stop bring forward concepts. It is absolutely okay to disagree with those recommendations. And this is why we bring forward these discussions. So a motion to decline can certainly be endorsed. It's a clear message and we move forward. That is okay.
I will gladly make that motion right now, Chair. Thank you.
So the motion would be that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors declines first reading or all readings of bylaw A 1089-1. Yeah.
Correct. And you let the people keep the power they have. Thank you.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Roth. Hey, did you have a comment, Director Roth? Okay. Any further comments? Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay. Cynthia, do you have it? Okay. Okay. Motion carried. Yeah. Because we're not defeating first reading. We're not doing first reading. Okay. So, okay, as long as you got the motion, we're all good. Director Cote, go ahead.
Through the chair to staff, I have a question. Election and voting that's happened in the past for Sprout Lake, there's only been one opportunity within the community. The second in-person voting is at the regional district office. So looking forward to the future, would that be an option for the Bamfield voting on this, to have one in person at in Bamfield and one at the office in person? So because it doesn't really specify that it has to be in Bamfield, although elections are supposed to be within so many, voting is supposed to be within so many miles. Thank you.
Yeah, so we would have to look at I don't know about the past, but typically you're in community. And so we'd have to look at every situation in its own merit and look at where it is that location should be for the legal frameworks that are there for us. So I can't speak to the past. I wasn't there for it, so I don't know what decision was made. But when we appoint a chief elections officer, they are responsible for ensuring that we're following the legislation. And typically what we would do is staff come forward with a plan that's shared. So the board is at least aware of what we're planning on doing, where we're planning on having various stations. And the reason why a resolution like this was coming to the board now is that it takes a lot of advanced planning. Once the date is set, there are so many legislative requirements in terms of how many days notice, how much time for the mail-ins. So we really are starting to look at this now, and so the direction is appreciated. But point is made. Any flexibility will be brought forward and discussed. Typically, we'll discuss with, like in this case, we'll be discussing with Bob to make sure we're not missing anything, and then bring that plan forward so that when the chief elections officer is acting, they have as much guidance as possible in doing that action.
Thank you. Notwithstanding Empire Day not too long ago, we do use kilometers, Director Cote. Okay. Anyway, anyone who works on cars either. Okay, so that brings us to item H, which is request for a decision regarding a notice on title. Mike, I think you're the only one here, so please go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, it's me. So this is regarding a recommendation to place a notice on title for 8682 Sterling Arm Drive. Just a brief summary: a building permit and development permit were both issued in 2020 for the property. The building permit did expire, and no inspections were called for or took place. In 2024, the ACRD staff contacted the agent, and there's a detailed timeline in the report. But in the end, all the inspections were completed. I will note that there was both construction built outside of what the permit was issued for, as well as outside the development permit area. There is a development variance permit that has been applied for, that if passed would sort of remedy some of these things. But there's also a situation where the property has been listed for sale. And because of the time that's elapsed, and again, the contact from the ACRD staff to provide options for bringing this into compliance, staff are recommending that a notice on title be placed. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Director Cote?
No questions, but I would move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors register a notice on title on Lot 10, District Lot 120, Alberni District Plan 42043, Excerpt Part in Plan 45044 as per Section 57 of the Community Charter.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Patella. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item I, which is primary care recruitment and retention, phase 1 report. Daniel, please go ahead.
Thank you. As you can see, we're bringing big agendas to you through it. And so this is a summary of phase 1 of the work that we've been looking at with regards to how the ACRD could potentially step into the realm of supporting and helping with the retention and recruitment of primary care providers. This first phase really went into exploring specifically the areas that we could operate in that are within the jurisdiction of local government. Did a really good job of taking a look at who's operating where and doing what other activities, because it was the desire of the board to ensure that we were not duplicating the efforts of other levels of government or agencies. And really focused in this case, our first phase focus was really in the Alberni Valley. And I think the report, the information feeding this report, gathered a lot of information from those people and agencies that are currently providing service in the Alberni Valley area, sometimes beyond. But it does give us a good overview of what is there. Prior to advancing to phase 2, which would be the exploration of a service or services that could help navigate these gaps, we wanted to make sure we were getting some clarity and that the board had the opportunity to deliberate on what was received in the first phase. So if I can just quickly summarize, the report identifies 3 broad areas that activities can take place in. One is in building healthy communities. And I know that is a broad statement, but really when we look at building healthy communities, we're looking at all of those elements that we take part in a day-to-day basis. Everything from our infrastructure, recreation elements, support of business, transit, a lot of our OCPs and planning. They're all tools that help build healthy communities. Under partnerships, we also see that there is room for us to expand and do some work. And then advocacy, which we're all familiar with, is still an area where we can do quite a bit of work to help this sector. Sorry, I have some notes that I want to make sure I'm not missing. I did flag that there are areas here that are mentioned that we are already operating in, and so we don't really harp in heavily on those. But areas like transit, which we know we work together with, areas like aquatics as amenities is identified as an important area for consideration. And we are working on that aquatics front. Parks and trails, which we know is an area of a lot of deliberation at a board level and at a community level. These are all good examples of things that matter in supporting the retention and recruitment of primary care providers. And we also have municipal government and treaty nations that are taking part in other elements within their jurisdiction that matter. Housing being one of those large ones, and daycares being the others. I think it's important to flag that the report maintains I think a well-justified holistic approach. There's no one part of this problem that is the silver bullet. There's a number of different areas that we can explore that help build a healthier community, that make it an easier decision for people to choose coming here instead of going elsewhere, or choose to stay here. It does identify a few good examples. And so one of the key good examples is the Comox area. And the Comox area on Vancouver Island has seen the greatest success in terms of its recruitment and retention. And in connecting with Island Health and physicians in that area, we see that housing availability and cost was a big factor in that decision. We see that the availability of rural or urban environments was a big decision in that. Recreation amenities and family amenities, and the access to employment for more than just the one individual that is providing service in the area are all important areas. And this is why this was such a complex report to assemble and a complex issue to address. I will also flag that the report identifies the estimates of what we're currently short. So we're currently short approximately 7 doctors, approximately 10 medical assistants, 2 nurse practitioners, 33 nurses, general specialists, 1 speech therapist, 2 social workers, and a number of different specialty areas like radiology and lab technicians. So the reason why this report needed to touch on that is that we often defer to, well, we're trying to attract doctors, which isn't necessarily the case. We're really trying to attract and retain primary care providers, because doctors, if we want to use that term, are not looking to work in isolation. And it is important to have a healthy ecosystem of health providers. And when we dig deeper, we see that there is a much larger need beyond just doctors. I will flag that in the recommendation that we're looking at, what staff are trying to do is identify areas where we could explore service development and create something that might apply to larger areas. So as an example, the exploration of a service that is looking for the acquirement of strategic properties and land, that is flagged because whether you're looking at housing, whether you're looking at rec amenities, whether you're looking at, even if we went into the direction of developing a corporate entity, any partnership structure, local government tends to be the partner that brings land. And that is a gap for the ACRD. And so we wanted to flag that because there's multiple different areas that could apply to. There's also the consideration of the creation of a not-for-profit or social enterprise. The reason why that comes up is many of the new primary care providers that are coming out of universities have identified that they're not necessarily looking to buy somebody else's business, nor are they looking to develop a business. They are actually looking to practice their practice and then move on. And so a good example is an Ontario model where there are for them, they are for profit, so it's different. But they provide the space, they provide the administrative support, and allow physicians across a gamut of different care, scope of care, to simply come in, be part of that, and move on. The model in Ontario tends to be a 40-60 split of the billing, and so the business that is providing the physical space and the admin support takes 40%, and the practicing primary care provider takes 60%. It is a model for us to look at and consider. I add the not-for-profit and social enterprise because they're important tools for us to consider, especially when we're looking at potentially stepping into this realm. I think, and this is where we get into staff interpretation, is that if we were to consider stepping into this realm, we don't want to be for profit. We end up putting ourselves in positions that we see for privatization of water, where people say, well, this is a basic human need. Why are you getting a profit from it? It also gets us into a bit of a gray legislative realm with provincial and federal legislation, where we don't want to be a private sector provider. So the not-for-profit helps us buffer that. It also helps work with tools within existing municipalities and treaty. I'm not sure, not familiar enough, but certainly local government, where there are tax waivers, tax exemptions. Tax exemptions can be issued for not-for-profits. And again, that drastically impacts the operating costs of any facility, which has also come up in some of the deliberations where primary care providers are saying, hey, the cost of operating is really getting high. Last but not least is continuing to work with some of these areas of building healthy communities. And we've done a bit of this already by our own volition in terms of reaching out to the communities within our federation and saying, what's in your strategic plan? What we haven't done is to go a bit further and say, what's in your official community plan or comprehensive community plan, on reserve, off reserve, treaty land or non-treaty land? And are we linking our official community plans sufficiently so that we're actually all working in the same direction? And that would be it seems like a small step, but it is a significant step beyond what any of us is currently doing. And it could be achieved. So those were the three areas that at a staff levels, looking at this report, we're saying, hey, if we're going to enter into phase 2, these are areas that we think we should consider. But again, we're really seeking the guidance here from the board to see where, if, and how we should proceed. And also talk about whether or not this should be a committee of the whole or a workshop, because this is a big decision to simply just make. And that's why you see in the recommendation, there's no recommendation saying, hey, we should just do this. Instead, what we're recommending is to receive and to defer to a forum where we can really sink our teeth into this if the board so chooses. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's important before we have comments that we kind of withhold our judgments on what we should do or not do next. Let's have that conversation after we potentially have a larger conversation about it, especially if we can bring in experts to help answer some questions in context. That being said, I do have speaker list of Dr. Boyko, Dr. Roth, Dr. Steer. Did I miss anyone? And Dr. Haggard. Oh, sorry, Dr. Cote. You were first, weren't you? Yeah, Dr. Cote is first. Sorry. So I'll write that down. Cote, Boyko, Roth, Steer, and Haggard. Okay, Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, just this, I think that this report is amazing. It's coming from Marcy DeWitt, who is the health Alberni Clayoquot Health Coordinator, so Health Network. She's got a lot of information. It's coming from all of the information that's already been collected and provided, a lot of it. So the connection to all these other communities through health networks that is being supported by Island Health, I think is really important. I would really like to see us move on with a lot of it. There's a lot of reports that are pieces of this that you need to continue on looking into that are not exactly laid out. So what's happening in other communities, what's happening in the Alberni Clayoquot. I know that the city of Port Alberni is taking some action. And I think that for us to have that all compiled into one report or area where we can take a look at all of the information of what we're doing all over the place and work together and pool our efforts, I think is really important moving forward. I think we've got a really good grasp with the direction that's sort of being implied here to take the next step. So I do support this, and I think it's a wonderful report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cote. Next up, we have Dr. Boyko and then Dr. Roth.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's some good things in this report, and I would like to hear directly from Island Health instead of going through a third party to get the actual answers on numbers that we need. But there's one thing that concerns me: having socialist government supplied housing for high paying doctors and nurses. I don't know if that's the right way to go, and I'll tell you why. If I'm a doctor making $200,000 to $300,000 a year, am I going to want to move somewhere where I'm going to live in an apartment as opposed to go buy one of the $1 million properties at Sproat Lake, like many of the doctors in the Alberni Valley do? So having socialist supplied housing that is government controlled and allocated and all those kind of things, I don't think that's the way to go, and I won't be supporting that part of it. That being said, I know that there is ads for Port Alberni popping up in the Calgary airport to come here and be a doctor. So there already is things going on in the background, and getting it more defined and better to improve the health services in this valley will be good. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Dr. Roth and then Dr. Steer.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a few notes on this. Like, I feel like this is outside of the scope of the regional district. It just doesn't feel like it's a service area that we should have, but I'm more than happy to explore it. It's just what I'm thinking now. But I'd like to note that family doctors changed how they do business. It's not necessarily that we lost doctors. It could be that how they choose to be doctors has changed. I certainly feel that with my own doctor. And perhaps we need to change our expectations where, we think that everyone should have a doctor. Well, it might be that that'll never be that way again. So, I mean, I have no problem exploring it, but we really need to look at why things changed and understand doctors more. I think bringing in Island Health would be a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, the family doctor practitioner thing goes back to like the 90s when a previous NDP government, I think, decided to hold off on the incentive program for general practitioners and family doctors. And we're just now feeling that for the past like 10, 15 years. But that's just something we're going to have to reverse course on. And there's going to be a lag time on it, I think. And that will need provincial wherewithal for that. Dr. Steer, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And I think Daniel, right at the very end, alluded to the fact that this is a huge conversation, that a committee of the whole venue may be the time for us to have it much more in depth. And I know they were looking for some form of direction, but I see as there was no recommendation in terms of specific direction, I think it's very important for us to have that much larger context in a, let's call it a less formal context, to be able to have that committee of the whole venue to have this. It is far reaching. My wife is one of the health professionals that are listed on here, and it is not just doctors. And I just want to bring that out. This is that continuum of care that reaches right from, and I do also recognize that this is Alberni Valley centric, but at the same time, what happens in the Alberni Valley is critically important to the services that happen out to the West Coast. They are intricately linked. So this has to be a much broader conversation, I believe, to draw in. So I'll leave it there just to say the fact I'm very much supportive of the idea of providing those types of services to the West Coast in what format, and that would be the direction I think you would look for in staff. And I heard Director Roth thinking about, is this a service area the ACRD should be involved in? It is a conversation through the committee of the whole that I think is imperative that we have. And so I'll leave it there, noting that if we could maybe staff to think about when an appropriate committee of the whole would be to bring this to the table.
You're champing at the bit. That's pretty cool. All right. Dr. Haggard, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With my conversations through Island Health, they've stated to me several times that in order to attract medical personnel, they need housing and they need daycare. And I don't think we should be providing free housing, but we can certainly try and provide market housing. Many doctors will come in and visit a community as a locum. They need a place to stay. They don't want to stay in a hotel for 3 months while they're practicing medicine, or a short-term stay while a doctor looks for housing. It could take 1 to 3 months to find a house, to close on the deal, to get the waiting period to actually move in, or longer, be up to 6 months. So we need to provide something for these medical doctors and medical personnel to stay in. And I agree with Director Cote. I think there is some issues. We have the city working on some things. The city just did a gap analysis workshop and a report will be forthcoming. When it is forthcoming, I will certainly pass it on to you, Daniel, so you can have a look at it as well. There is a group of doctors who are working on an initiative, and they're going to be hosting a health summit in June, which I will be attending. And Community Futures is working on things as well. So I feel like there's a lot of groups working on things, and maybe we're not communicating on who's doing what and how we can work better together to make things happen. So if we are going to have a committee of the whole, I think we maybe invite those partners in and think, okay, what can we do and who's doing what? And what initiatives can we actually work on to make a difference and make things happen in the community? Thank you.
Depending on how organized we are in the lead up to that, we may want to have an internal conversation with some input from like Island Health and New Channels first. And then once we identify all the questions that we want answered or the questions we don't want to ask, then we can have a larger symposium or something like that. Sorry, Director Patala, please go ahead.
Oh, good, I'm on. So I'm just looking at the last page, the conclusions, and that wonderful chart that has a circle surrounded by a lot of circles that aren't health. And so my summary of this report is, and I think it's a very good report, but I also think it's stating the obvious, which is if you want to have good healthcare, you need to have a good city for people to move to, or municipality, township, regional district. Insert your type of local government. And I would agree with Director Boyko that social housing for doctors is probably not an easy sell, but it's not necessarily for doctors when we talk about housing opportunities. It's for the support staff. It's for people that are on temporary locums. It's for people that are on part of their education program. And most importantly, it's for baristas. Because if the baristas aren't in the city, the doctors aren't coming to the city. And so really what we're talking about here is healthy communities, a whole healthy community. So I would caution in the steps forward to not become over-focused on just what a doctor needs. Because if you design your placemaking for a doctor only, then not only will you not get the baristas, but you also won't get the diesel mechanics that are important for the industrial and light industrial production, that is important for the economy of the city, that is important for the partner of the healthcare worker that works in trucking. So whilst it is a unique situation that focuses on the doctors, the solution is, in my humble opinion, not unique and not specific to doctors, but specific to every individual that is a part of your community.
Thank you. Back to Director Boyko.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just as a final note, I think we all have thoughts and opinions, and providing socialized apartments for baristas and diesel mechanics is something I don't think taxpayers would ever pay for. That being said, we're all making assumptions. We need more real data from Island Health rather than just making up things that it takes 6 months to rent a house in this town, because there's lots of rentals out there. We need real data and what is actually required. And I would request that staff put that together whenever we meet up again, so we're not making assumptions about anything. Thank you.
Go ahead, Daniel.
I think just hearing some of the questions, and I think Chair Jack, from one of the comments you made, I was just thinking as a lead up to this, if we choose a forum type, whether it's a committee of the whole or a workshop, a workshop would be more of a model where we invite other professionals to be part of it. Committee of the whole is really the board discussing. So I'm starting to maybe lean towards maybe a workshop is what we want. And just hearing some of Director Boyko's comments, it might be good for staff to just put together a bit of a survey that we could send out to the board to collect specific areas of questions, because more data is certainly achievable. There's a time element to more data and the volume of data required. So there again, having specific questions would be useful in us gauging the timing of all this so that we can have an informed discussion. And I do want to remind, because I hadn't thought of in my report, which is important to reiterate, Director Steer was talking about the application across the entire region. And I just want, I forgot to bring us back to that point, but when the board made this decision, our area of focus started with the Alberni Valley because it's such a big region to tackle. But the entire board made the decision to explore this. The entire board made a financial contribution to fund establishing the budget. So this is a regional discussion. So I just wanted to make sure that I reemphasize that this is something that the Treaty Nations, the West Coast, the Alberni Valley all contributed. So this is an all board discussion, even though we're talking about a case specific right now of the Alberni Valley. But it's also why as we explore various potential services, that we're looking at areas of service that have multiple applications, because the desire at the end of the day is to think regionally on this one.
And depending on the input from those various organizations, like the idea is it's good to centralize a lot of services, but if somebody from Tofino is willing to drive into Port Alberni for an MRI, it should stand to reason that someone from Port Alberni would be willing to drive to Tofino to see an occupational speech therapist or something like that. Right. So it is regional. It is something we have to talk about, because there may be instances where a lot of professionals want to live and work around here. So maybe that's what you see coming down the pipe. Now, how we deal with that is a conversation we need to have internally first, I think, but I'm willing to contemplate a workshop depending on how people are thinking right now. If we can go straight to having a bunch of people in the room, and if we think we can handle that, because there's going to be a lot of content coming out of that conversation, and then that would be good. We'd skip a whole step though if we did that, and that would save us time, but I just wouldn't want to miss anything or get overwhelmed. Director Roth, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking back a couple of months ago when Island Health did a presentation and they requested, I think, $1.4 million from us. And I believe we turned them down, but it was to build or to do something with housing for doctors and support staff in Tofino. And, they're going down that road right now. So it would be good to include them too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We had a whole conversation in Victoria about that actually, and it was just from what we understand, there was the marching orders for the ministry to or for Island Health to ask each local government if they wanted to, without saying that they didn't need to. But the truth was we didn't need to contribute in order for some of these projects to move forward, so we didn't. And that was actually identified as a real sticking point for almost every local government official I've talked to about this, that there are some weird tactics being taken in order to try to save the province money by downloading those costs. So we just got to hold the line on that. But literally every mayor and chair I've spoken to has identified that as just a huge sticking point. So I think that'll be a message that'll be sent during ABICC and UBCM very strongly. Sorry, I completely forgot the other point you made. Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that up. They're trying to do the same thing, and they were including social housing and the things that we're talking about, but it was Island Health that was spearheading it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. And yeah, that was a part of what they were planning on asking us to contribute to, and we didn't, and that project may still yet go forward.
Okay, thanks.
Director Steer, go ahead.
Great. If there was no other comments, I'd like to move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District ACRD Board of Directors receive the Phase 1 Health Professional Recruitment and Retention in the Alberni-Clayoquot Report.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Second that.
Thank you, Director Haggard. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of receiving the report? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
And then I'll move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors instructs staff to add primary care recruitment and retention to a future, and I'm going to put committee of the whole because that's what's written, meeting to better establish the details of the next phase of work and exploring a possible new service or services. And I'll just look quickly to Daniel. Is that okay to, or would you like to have the flexibility of committee of the whole / workshop?
That's what I was going to
Yeah,
say.
you might want to add.
Okay, I will add committee of the whole / workshop meeting to better establish the details of the next phase of work and exploring a possible new service or services.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Dr. Haggard. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? A motion carried. Thank you. Alrighty, so
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, may I ask a question of Daniel?
go ahead, please.
I had told Island Health that this report was coming. Am I able to send them this report, or would you rather wait until after the committee of the whole meeting?
No, you can send it, and I will be sending it to the individual as well through Pat Deacon that is doing the June 22nd event, just so they have the information. And I believe Marcy will be there on our behalf. It's my daughter's graduating day, so of all the days for them to pick, they put me on the agenda as a speaker on a Saturday, and I was like, well, typically I could, but Marcy is going to be there, and I think Veda might. We had some periphery discussions, but we haven't followed up yet, so we will have representation.
And I'll be there as well.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you, Director Boyko.
No, thank you. I was a little bit surprised at what Director Haggard just said there, that we will send this report to Island Health. That's why I think in the future we should get data directly from Island Health as opposed to going through a third party, so that we know exactly what Island Health is looking for the requirements, rather than making assumptions and using someone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel, did you have your comment?
I should clarify some of that. Marcy did do her outreach with Island Health as well in putting together this report. So even though it was very specific to this area, people like the Division of Family Practice are well connected with Island Health. The themes that they're talking about are those same themes. I think the group that Director Haggard is speaking to is a group that we met with about a month ago, which is really more of the administrative level. So fair enough, that wasn't part of the discussion, and that's where we're sharing. But again, Director Boyko, you're not incorrect in terms of making sure that the data we have is actually consistent with or reflective of the data that the administrative level of Island Health also has is really important, so that we're not at odds. But it's important to say that Marcy did do that outreach across a very wide swath of Island Health as well.
Thank you. Dr. Cote, and then I think we're going to take a break after this and then go right into planning.
Thank you. So I was just going to also say that Marcy DeWitt is the Health Network Coordinator and works very closely with Island Health. We provide Island Health with a lot of the numbers and data that they use. So Island Health relies on the health networks for a lot of the information that they require, and provide the networks also with input back to them. So there isn't a whole lot more that Island Health could provide that the health network couldn't. And Marcy's excellent at what she does do. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Cote. Dr. Siga?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I think going back to Director Boyko's comments, there is a real disjuncture in how funding for the business model practitioners is provided, and what they consider to be essential services, when in reality it is all essential services in terms of healthcare delivery. So what we're grappling with is trying to breach this disjuncture, and Island Health is not situated as well as the communities are to recognize where the problems are occurring on the front lines. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for that. Quickly, Director Boyko?
Last point. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Director Siga there. That being said, this is also a provincial problem, and are we gonna solve it in the Alberni Claycott Regional District? I would like to say that probably not, but we will try. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to call a break until 3:40, just a bathroom, that sort of thing. All right, thanks, everyone.
Campbell River just got an MRI machine.
Well, they got,
Or is it called?
they didn't want to tell you. You got a new one brought in.
Yeah.
They're outside. No one was trained on the machine.
Oh, yeah.
Trained on the old machine.
Yeah.
So they had to cancel the appointment because the machine was sitting there, but no one had taken the course of training for that. And they knew how to run.
They weren't certified.
So
Yeah.
they had to sit there for 3 days.
Well, and I mean, that's, so my background's microbiology, biochemistry, but I graduated, did the whole program, did tons of lab work my entire, all those years. But then when I graduated, I realized, oh, I have to go get a lab technician certification at BCIT. So I'm not qualified to work in a lab right now. Like, that's kind of like, you know, like, I don't know. So there's things like at the academic level that they need to improve, or it's like letting, you know, students know, hey, you might want to, or for like our universities to offer that, because the only place to get it is at BCIT, and that means, oh, so now I got to move to Vancouver for a couple of years, and now just recently because of COVID, they changed it and you can do it through distance and then go there for like a couple days or something like that. But yeah, it's not just here where the problem sits, it's in the academic world and making sure that those opportunities and people are well aware of how to get there. Because you have people like me that could definitely be a lab technician, but the pathway to get there wasn't in my 5-year plan. So I gotta adjust things and see. Yeah, anyways, it's just another
I've been able to train people,
and train people.
but then they said, okay, now you have all this equipment. Well, you're not certified.
Yeah.
I'm certified to train.
Oh, it's
people,
Todd Patola,
but
returning
not
your phone call,
certified to run it.
250-730.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah,
That's weird.
Yeah.
I think
like-
you'd be able to.
No, you haven't paid it.
Yeah.
You know I'm about 3 steps higher, right?
Yep.
But you haven't got this one.
Yeah, it's not,
You actually should.
that's just so weird, because I would think that you'd be able to, you're training the people, why wouldn't you be able to, so that, yeah.
Ish. I know, maybe it's all about the paperwork, right?
Yep,
Thanks.
that it is. Hopefully I can.
Got stuck in the traffic on Indian Clulet. And for all the traffic
Make
coming out
those-
too. Right.
To make it a little bit easier to do it through distance, but it's still like the lab, if I can get, if the Campbell River lab is allowed to let me in and do internship hours there, or if it has to be in Vancouver at BCIT.
I know, so yeah, what's happening there.
Be interesting too.
So I went and I had people, probably you're not gonna have them, but so people in the community said, can we meet up, on this road? We have some concerns. Problem. So I go there, instead of being like 5 people, there's 28 people. Big year. Anyway, and they said, well, this is a problem we have. We did a walk and talk on the tour on the area. What concerns they have, what are we gonna do?
Here we are.
One of the guys that showed up a little bit late from the area said, what's going on? And the regional rep, he said, I'm not invited. I said, no, I can't invite people. They asked me to come, I can't, that's what a rep does, right? Good thing. So by the time I got home that night, social media was just going stupid because I had this secret meeting with a little group, right? A little special interest group trying to stop.
The question is whether or not Mike has made Alex show up for this meeting instead of him.
Beta end up in Port Alberni.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Like the
we voted to look at putting motorized vehicles on Log Train Trail.
Yeah.
So he said, I'm trying to go behind the board's back, we're trying to get it stopped. I said, well, no, we voted to ask Modi if we were allowed.
Mhm.
We haven't got an answer yet. So technically, the old rules still apply because the new rule hasn't come in. People all think that because we asked, the new rules start today. I said, they don't.
They just need a little bit more of an explanation.
So he's
How to
there
understand
stirring
that.
the pot, getting meetings to go on a motocross pit. Again, the whole behind, I was like, that wasn't even discussed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So now he's got, I don't know how many
There's
people.
always those people. Well, I mean, I don't know. We
Yeah.
struggled with that in our community with some in the last election, and it was like this person was making all these promises to things that they can't actually and shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Like you can't make promises to do all these things and then not actually like understand the basics of how things are approved and
Well, you can't.
implemented and
You can't, that's Brexit. Remember England walked out of the EU? They voted for Brexit, get out of the EU. And they won. And the guy says, what about all the promises you made? I says, no, lies. Who think they're gonna win?
exactly. It was just a bunch of yeah.
And he said that, he said, that was all a bunch of lies. They had to quit after that because, yeah, some of the agenda was on top of that, but they won. It's not causing inflationary problem.
This person was like 6 votes away from winning.
I won by 4 first time. And the other guy was. So, I made a report up what the meeting was about. I sent it down. I said, this is what. They have concerns. They have legitimate concerns. This guy took it upon himself to take, well, not what was said, but what his little point of view, and run with it. And we're like,
So then are you gonna do this different or?
I got accused of secret meetings.
Was that part of the conversation with Souls or something? Like, did you get approached by?
Oh,
I think this is just a regular process that everyone's getting approached on.
oh, that's different. Yes,
Yeah, the
no,
confidential kind of conflict
That's-
resolution.
that's because we're like a big family, not a happy family, just a big family. I'm getting, oh, what the heck is going on here?
I didn't, now I need to just.
Hi, it's Todd Patola, returning your call. Okay. Absolutely.
Right?
Mhm.
Support motorized access to lodging. Well, we voted on it, it's not illegal.
Mhm.
So. Is it yours? Did you get this?
Oh, Jesus. That's a lot.
No, I live here in you.
Oh, and you let, okay.
Oh. You walked here, right?
I don't know.
I should have, but I didn't.
First thing I asked Director Johnson is whether or not she had a safe drive here. Oh, Mike did not make Alex come to the meeting, so he's still here. Well, thank you for sticking around, Mike. Yep, I think Jenny's all done, so I think we can probably kick back off. Alrighty, so we're entering into planning matters for items 9.1 and 9.2. And one thing I'll just remind the municipal and indigenous directors is that you don't get to vote on these, but you count for quorum, so please stick around. So that brings us to 9.1A. So remember that this is the new item. So this is the development variance permit application for Sprout Lake. So Mike, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so this is a development variance application for 8243 Dixon Drive in Sprout Lake. And the proposal is to reduce the north side yard setback from 15 feet to 7.5 feet to allow for an accessory building, a garage. And this property is 0.63 of an acre, and it is zoned A1. The board first considered this application on April 24th, as required in the Local Government Act. The notices have been sent out, and we have received one letter of support, and that is attached as the extra item on the agenda. We recommend that the variance be issued, and as always, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cote.
Thank you. No questions. I would like to move that the Board of Directors issue development variance permit DVD 231012.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Beckett. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, next item is item B. It is a rezoning application for Beaver Creek. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, yeah. So this is a rezoning application for a property at 6210 Drinkwater Road. And the application is to rezone a portion of the property from RA2 to RA3. And the intent of the property owner is to create up to three lots on the northern portion that is being rezoned, and one lot on the southern portion adjacent to Drinkwater Road. The remainder of the property is in the ALR and would stay as a parcel, and so the remainder would be about 88.7 acres. All conditions of rezoning have now been met, and we recommend that the board adopt this bylaw. And again, happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Roth, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I'd like to move that bylaw P1487, Regional District of Alberni-Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be adopted.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any comments? Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I see that there's. Okay, I see that there's Parc de Beau Park. So was that an existing park, or does
Yes,
that
that
affect, is that part of this piece of property that's being?
No, at one point in time when that park was created, it was subdivided off this portion, but the area below the railway tracks is a separate parcel now from the property above.
So just
so the directors are aware, a park at subdivision time, parkland dedication would not apply because that park was already created, and it was at the time it was created, it was part of the parent parcel. So there would not be any parkland dedication or cash in lieu when this current subdivision is considered.
So my question, I guess, is that the park is not a piece of this property.
That is correct.
Separate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, is that an arm up? Oh no, Dr. Boyko? No? Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. That brings us to 9.2. So this is for electoral area directors and Tofino. So item 9.2 is the public hearing report for the former land use contracts. Please go ahead, Mike.
Yes, and just by way of quick explanation, so one of the properties being considered is Wickeninish Island, and it's just off of Tofino, actually, and it's an island, and so that is within the area that the district of Tofino participates in land use planning, and just hence why the vote's a little different than the other ones. So there was a public hearing for these two bylaws, which is to rezone the former land use contracts, or the land use contracts that will expire at the end of June. And the public hearing was held on May 13th at the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Office. There are currently 9 land use contracts that will end on June 30th, as I mentioned. And the intent of bylaws P1496 and P1497 is to rezone the properties to allow the uses that are currently permitted under the land use contracts to continue under these new zones. If adopted, the bylaws would take effect June 30th, the day the land use contract expired, and it was just drafted that way to allow for basically a smooth transition through there. And prior to the public hearing, I do want to note that the board had requested that we held an open house, and so we did have 4 members of the public attend the open house, and we were able to answer some questions around what how the bylaws applied to the properties that these individuals were interested in. There were no letters received prior to the public hearing, and there were a few members of the public attended the public hearing and some questions, that staff were able to answer. And the public hearing minutes are attached, and we recommend that the board proceed with second and third readings. And again, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. So we have some motions in front of us. Director Cote, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a uneventful public hearing, which was great. I would move that the Board of Directors receive the public hearing report.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Oh, Director Siga, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I infer thoughts about the Wickenish Island change of use. I was just wondering if we got feedback from the Tloquit band, because that was their traditional territory.
We did send it to it was referred out. We didn't receive any feedback on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comment? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
I'll continue on. That I'll move that the Board of Directors receive the public hearing minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Comments? Don't see any. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Yeah, please continue.
I'll move that bylaw P1496 Regional District of Alberni-Clayoquot zoning text amendment bylaw be read a second time.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you.
I'll move third reading.
Do we have a seconder, Dr. Siga?
Us.
Yeah, okay. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
I'll move that bylaw P1497 Regional District of Alberni-Clayoquot zoning atlas amendment bylaw be read a second time.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
And I'll move third reading.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Alrighty, that brings us into reports. First one is staff reports, 10.1. We have our regular meeting schedule and a building report. Could we have a motion to receive the reports, please? Everyone, thank you. Dr. McEwen and Director, oh, I didn't see somebody on the other side. Dr. Boyko, thank you. Does anybody have any comments? Dr. Boyko, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll point out the building inspection report, last page. I think the year to date is a year behind. So year to date should be 2024 at the top, not 2023, the bottom section, just to have it accurate. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. That'll be amended. Identify that as an amendment. All right, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Alrighty, that brings us to 10.2, which are member reports. 911 Corporation, Director Beckett.
No report, no meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Vancouver Island Regional Library, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. The library has initiated a new financial committee. We had our first meeting with the executive last week, and nothing at this point to report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, Dr. Haggard or Patella?
No report.
No report. Thank you. Air Quality Council, Port Alberni, Dr. Sparrow.
I have a report.
Quickly, please. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Public education highlights. A new radio public service announcement on smoke hazards in the wildfire season is on the air for May and June. Advocacy highlights. AQC submitted a detailed letter to the Ministry of Forests requesting reductions in slash pile burning. And they also received a detailed letter from the Ministry of Forests as responding favorably to our requests. Other highlights, a detailed email, Island Health, Environmental Health Sciences, Angela Eckenbrush, referred to our excellent Port Alberni PM 2.5 sensor network, which is a result of the AQC's past work. In the pipeline, they're trying to make a request to Mosaic to reduce slash pile burning in the valley and request of letter of support from the ACRD to the Ministry of Forests and Mosaic. It's in the pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you for that. AVICC, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. It's so nice to be a past president. One of our new directors, Tennille, and I can't remember her last name, recently had a new baby. So we'll be doing orientation on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sawakin Public Advisory Group, Dr. Sparrow.
No report at this time. Thank you.
Okay, no report. Are there any other reports? Okay, seeing none, could we have a motion to receive the reports? Thank you, Dr. Roth, seconded by Dr. Steer. Any further comments? All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All righty. No unfinished business, no late business. Question period. Do we have any responses at the email address?
No questions in email and no questions in Zoom.
Great. I don't believe we're going in camera. And we don't need to report anything out because we didn't go in camera. Could we have a motion to adjourn, please? Dr. Siga, do you want to move? Thank you. Seconded by Director Roth. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carried. All right, thank you. All right, safe drive home, Dr. Siga. Okay.
And thank you, thank you, Mayor McEwen, for hosting.
Thank you for
us.
the host. This is great. I like the arrangement. It's very, very good. It's
Have a good afternoon, everybody, and safe travels back to wherever you were going.
Thank you. Have a good one. Thanks everybody for attending. Bye.